broadcasting from the Unshackled Studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's WilmsFront Snapshot news show, coming to you a day later on this Wednesday the 24th of June 2026, as I had an event on last night. We are live on the WilmsFront YouTube channel, and for those of you watching, you will notice that I'm sitting in a new ergonomic chair because last week I was in severe lower back pain. So I decided to get one which it not only goes up and down, but also goes back and has what is known as lumbar support. That's a lot of ergonomic jargon. I got it at a end of financial year discount, and my back is feeling a lot better, which is great. So hopefully it's doing the trick. Though, because I was basically in couldn't really go far last week and spent a lot of time on this computer, it's been going really slowly. So I hope tonight, even though I've got the roadcaster video streaming, there's been some lag on my Mac Studio. So hopefully that doesn't affect the broadcast. I have got a few web pages to share. So yeah, fingers crossed. It is 8:30 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria. And even though it was a week ago, Pauline Hanson's address to the National Press Club for the first time in a 30-year political career is still reverberating across Australian politics. She captured the spirit of her 1996 maiden speech when she said that Australia cannot be a multicultural society. We are a multiracial society, but we must be monocultural. Now, this monoculture has been trending on X and other social media. What is a monoculture? Well, according to the the Labor diversity is our strength, multiculturalism is great because of the food. The responses were typical. So this is New South Wales Labor MP Jihad Dab. So he's got some triangle cut bread there with butter on it. Said there's 27 million individual, well, there's actually 28 now, Jihad, individual Australian stories. Each one is unique and contributes to the great Australian narrative. Our diversity is our strength, and there is so much more to multiculturalism than food. But I do ponder what my monocultural lunch could be. You just add sprinkles, hundreds of thousands on there, and you've got some delicious fairy bread. I remember fairy bread was a staple of my birthday party and those of my friends growing up. Fond memories of the monocultural Australian birthday parties with fairy bread. But then there was also the libertarian Victorian MLC, David Limbrick, who decided to post, I'm a bit confused and need some help from One Nation supporters about this new monoculture. Can you help me out by defining it? What religions are acceptable? Can we still eat a banh mi and Chinese takeaway, or are they gone? What about Macca's? Is that okay, or dirty Seppo culture? Now, I've said this before, and it seems to me that the fact that multiculturalism, its support for it is declining because we are seeing our social cohesion fracture with of course, all of these multiple cultures clashing with each other. Now, David Limbrick has a Japanese wife and so has 3 half Japanese children, so it's personal for him. But they always go on about food, and Japan is a monoculture, though according to the ABC, because there's some ethnic minorities, then it's not monoculture. Of course, most countries around the world have ethnic or religious minorities, but they are still expected to be loyal, patriotic citizens of that country. And if you go to Japan, it's going to be Japanese. And yes, they have Western food there, such as McDonald's. So that doesn't mean that Japan is suddenly Western, and because they want to preserve their monoculture, though they are under pressure to accept mass immigration to address their declining fertility rate, which is the same here. So them having McDonald's doesn't compromise their monoculture, and our parents and grandparents, when Australia had as a monocultural policy pre-1975, when the Labor mafia stooge Al Grasby was the first minister for multiculturalism, there were still Chinese takeouts. And do we need to have 1 million Chinese in Australia, 1 million Indians, so we can have Indian and Chinese restaurants? And the ABC and the SBS, they claimed that the only monocultures that they could point to were North Korea and Nazi Germany. Well, I would define them as cults of personalities around the leader. Now, of course, earlier this year, I went to Thailand, which is a monoculture, 92% Buddhist, and the king is seen as the protector of the Buddhist faith, even though they have a 5% Muslim minority who have the same rights as every other Thai. I saw a lot of hijabs working at the 7-Elevens in Bangkok, and where I was staying in Phuket, actually, the breakfast lady was a hijab. I use the term hijab to describe a Muslim woman who wears the hijab, because there's ones here like Ann Ali who says she's a Muslim but doesn't wear the hijab. And Thailand, I admired that there was national flags everywhere. They also had the royal flags there as well. They had they used to be what is sometimes described as the multicultural kingdom of Siam, but the name was changed to Thailand, and then a policy of Thaification in the 1930s and 40s was implemented, where all the schools were going to teach the standard Thai language, because where I stayed in Isan region in the north, it has a slightly different culture, because which is more related to neighboring Laos. But Thaification, it was introduced because, well, the reason why the French and the British colonized Southeast Asia, Indochina, Burma is because, and you'll never hear this story about colonization, is because white man's burden. This is what we're seeing at the moment as well, that we need to introduce advanced civilizations to these cultures and bring them into our ways. And Thaification was basically, if we don't become one people, one culture, one nation, then we will die as a country. And ever since then, Thailand, it has been a strong monoculture. And as I've entitled this show, I'm sort of paraphrasing Lyle Lanley, the monorail salesman from The Simpsons. Mono means one, and culture means nation. That's what a nation, that's when nationhood, nationalism, it started to come into being in the 1850s, when a lot of the empires were collapsing, such as the Holy Roman Empire. This was Germany, the German Empire, Germany for the Germans, the unification of the Italian states, Italy for the Italians. That was the idea behind a nation state: one people, one culture. Now, they also went after Pauline Hanson because she quoted the 2021 census that showed that 1 in 4 people, 23%, spoke a language other than English at home, the most common being Mandarin and Arabic. Now, the reason she mentioned that is she was wanting to set the scene that 872 Australians self-reported as not speaking English not well or not at all. So we'll see what transpires in the 2026 census, which I'm not sure what census nights is. And so then we had Anne Ali again saying that Pauline Hanson's going to police what language you can speak at home, coming after the nonnas. Mamma mia! And she's not going to spy on what you're speaking in your living room. Ayes Dios mío, Scheiße. These are just various phrases I know in other languages. But going back to my recent experience in Thailand, I could only get so far with not knowing the Thai language. And if I wanted to stay there longer, I'd have to know basic Thai. Just if you come here, you're not going to be able, well, we have ethnic enclaves, but you're not going to basically be able to participate outside your ethnic enclave if you can't speak English properly or not at all. And one of the Grand Muftis didn't even speak English. Now, I saw, it was the Chaser, I saw that they decided to snip it up, Pauline Hanson's National Press Club speech, and because she was nervous, she mispronounced a few words, and so they were mocking, oh, she's wanting people to speak English, but she can't speak it properly herself. Well, the Victorian Labor government MPs, they can't spell the English words correctly. So this was a group of 4 of them that said, share your experience in primary to year 9. And it had the I and E the wrong way around after the R, which don't they have so many different staff to make sure that they don't make these embarrassing blunders? And even today, the Labor, they wanted to honour Julia Gillard because it was 16 years since she became Prime Minister after knifing Kevin Rudd, and they spelt female wrong. They can't define it. again, they don't know their way around the English language, the modern Labor Party. They spell Labor not in the British Australian spelling, but the American one. So they can't spell female, labor, or experience. Now, I'm not going to show the Get Up poster, but you will all have seen it. It dropped when Pauline Hanson was speaking about Australian families and children going hungry. So it read, and Get Up claimed responsibility. It's read, I opposed a rise for workers while I took 100,000 pay rise for myself. Well, so did every other politician take 100,000 pay rise. So the press club, their staff ripped it off. They said they had no knowledge of it, and they released a statement after saying that the day before there was unauthorized access by two individuals who installed the projector above their stage, and David Shiraz, the bankrupt husband of Brittany Higgins, who is Get Up's campaign director. And it also should be noted that Brittany Higgins herself has got her own lobbying a gig recently. The executive director of Vida Fund, which is campaigning for gender equity, which is also campaigning against One Nation. And they, of course, call it gender equity because they recognize all of the different genders, and Brittany Higgins, who's also bankrupt, has her own pronouns on her page. So certainly not a feminist organization in the traditional sense. Now, David Shiraz, even though his employment with Get Up is well known, they spent $600,000 trying to defeat One Nation in Farah. David Farley won easy. So he's not a working journalist, but the National Press Club rules is that if you were a working journalist in the past, you can be a member and have a pass. Now, all the other entrances were blocked off because the Canberra Socialists protested out the front. There was Australian Federal Police sweep, yet nobody recognized that there was this new device that was installed above the stage. And David Shiraz allegedly lowered it with a remote control and then left shortly after. Luckily, it was just a remote control for a projector, not a remote detonator. Now, Pauline Hanson has requested that she receive extra AFP protection because of all the threats that have been made against her. But Anthony Albanese claimed it's not his decision. It is... Have I just gone offline? No, I don't think I have. Again, my computer playing tricks on me. So let me know in the chat if anything goes wrong. Now, Pauline Hanson, she has requested extra security. Asked the Prime Minister to be given more AFP protection, but Anthony Albanese claims it's not his decision. It is the decision of the Australian Federal Police. Well, that has turned out to be another Albanese lie, because if you look at this article in the Age and Sydney Morning Herald that Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke told Andrew Hastie he would receive enhanced security because he had allegedly received threats against him over his role as a potential witness concerning the Ben Robert Smith war crime allegations, because he testified against Ben Robert Smith at the defamation case that Ben Robert Smith brought against Channel 9 and Nick McKenzie and Chris Masters. And it also quoted what Andrew Hastie is said to have told his colleagues in the party room, and said that the decision was driven by an orchestrated campaign against him and had been fueled by One Nation and its supporters over the Ben Robert Smith controversy, and said, "I would rather get taken out in a box than bend the knee to One Nation." Now, and again, Albanese always talks about turning down the temperature, and Andrew Hastie is talking about saying that this is that I believe it's that these threats have in part been inspired by One Nation's campaign against me. Why would you use such a hyperbolic language, such as being taken out in a box, which obviously we know is slang for coffin? Why would you use such a metaphor there? And he also vowed to continue fighting the minor party, declaring, "I will never surrender to One Nation, and we will do them, and we'll do them slowly." So he's quoted both Game of Thrones and Paul Keating, because remember, that was Paul Keating's zinger to John Hewson when he took over as Prime Minister, and John Hewson says, "Well, why don't you call an early election?" He said, "I want to do you slowly." And of course, the reason why it's such an iconic line is because that's exactly what happened. Keating did do Hewson slowly over the GST in the 1993 federal election. And of course, Andrew Hastie has previously said that Pauline Hanson is MAGA first, not Australia first. And Nick McKim went even further and said that Pauline Hanson's Israel first and America second. So I wonder if Andrew Hastie would claim that Pauline Hanson puts Israel before Australia. Because as we know, that Pauline Hanson is a kosher nationalist. She wore an Israeli scarf to the parliament one day and was told to remove it. And now, one of her biggest backers is Hancock Prospecting Executive Chairman. She calls herself the Executive Chairman, Mrs. Reinhardt, even though she's a woman. Gina Reinhardt at the News Corp Bush Summit in Townsville presented Pauline Hanson with a bulldozer to bulldoze through the bureaucracy in Canberra. But it was one particular idea Gina Reinhardt had for far north Queensland that generated a lot of both attention and alarm.
Townsville made important history years ago. As a Navy base at Townsville, helping defend our country in World War II. I understand, and of course also aircraft facilities and of course. I understand many veteran families still live in this area. That important culture, a very important culture, could flourish again if we also offered free land, be that near Prairie if suitable or elsewhere near Townsville, for the Israelis and transport here for their skilled people, immediate families and equipment, and encourage the Israelis to develop and build their advanced war drones and or other advances in defence, and or improve upon their Israeli-style domes and manufacture them here to sell to our country to help make our people and critical infrastructure safe.
What type of industries do you think that we should try to attract to underutilised regions such as here in beautiful Townsville?
Well, I think you might have heard the word Elon before.
Yes.
Obviously,
just 1 or 2 times.
I have, of course, not discussed this with him, so I'm only off my own bat. But see all those beautiful deserted islands out there? Wouldn't it look wonderful with Elon arriving after having a few rockets built that launch the satellites so that we can get connectivity? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have those rocket launches with the satellites happening on those islands out there? Imagine the tourist opportunity, but also imagine so many youngsters leaving uni, instead of having to go overseas for high skills, could actually learn and still be near their families if they were out on those islands helping this happen.
I think you better be careful. I think a lot of people are going to be heading to Townsville after that conversation.
You might remember Elon Musk was given a big chainsaw to try and cut government tape and bureaucracies over in America. We need more than one of these things. We actually need a beautiful, big, fat, where is it? It's coming. We need an orange bulldozer. Let's hear the noise. Grrr. Okay, I don't hear that noise. Let's hear a bit more. Grrr.
Gina was like a little kid again. Now, I thought she was actually going to present her with like an actual huge bulldozer. We'd hear the beep, beep, beep come in, but it was just a tiny toy one. I mean, a chainsaw, which of course Harvey Millet, it was actually a live chainsaw that he was going to chainsaw through the state. Chainsaws, they're small, but they can cause a lot of damage. So when Elon Musk presented that, it was actually the size that it is. When it's a toy bulldozer, it doesn't have, I think, the same effect, because that's not going to bulldoze squat. But going back to what Gina said about we should give our land for free to the Israelis. Gina did say that we could also have access to their technology, but I think a lot of Australians would think that if there's foreign investment into Australia, it should be that Australians get something for the use of that land. I saw RV Yemeni, of course, put out a video attacking critics of Gina Rinehart's IDF in North Queensland proposal. Now, RV Yemeni posted a photo of him with the Pauline Hanson saying One Nation, Monoculture. Well, except with RV Yemeni, it's two nations, because he's, in his own words, an Israeli. And I've always seen him take Israel's sides over Australia's. Now, going to Gina's other idea, the SpaceX rocket launches from North Queensland. She did last week reportedly invest $1.4 billion in Elon Musk's SpaceX when it was floated on the stock exchange, which has made him the world's first trillionaire. So again, Gina Reinhart, she's spruiking for a company she's invested in to set up in Australia. That should hardly be surprising. Now, going back to Pauline Hanson's National Press Club address, and it's quite appropriate that the initials of the club are NPC, because pretty much the Canberra press gallery journalists are all NPCs. And it was actually after the projector was lowered that, because she was very nervous reading from her speech, that really got her fired up. We saw the Pauline, I've had a gutful, and she had a lot more of that raw passion that we're used to from her. And in her speech, she had a few pointed messages to the journalists. You have to earn the trust of the Australian people. I'm confident I can. Can the media say the same thing? Now, a speech went for 45 minutes, which meant there was 45 minutes of journalists questioning. She said she would make the ABC a subscription service and would abolish SBS. When SBS's Anna Henderson said, we provide services in over 60 languages, you're wanting people to help assimilate into Australia, surely that's a stepping stone. She said, no, I want them to learn English before they get here. And also, Anna Henderson asked about her position on abortion, where she said that after 20 weeks, she believes shouldn't be permitted. Though then there was reports that Malcolm Roberts wanted One Nation to fully ban abortions. And I've seen, interestingly, both Ozpil and Alexandra Marshall say that One Nation should not campaign on abortion, rolling back the abortion up until birth laws, because they believe that the women in Australia always want, I'm paraphrasing here, always want, this is how I put it, they always want plan D for death. And I guess they point to Stephen Miles' campaign against David Crisafulli in the 2024 Queensland state election on abortion, and that was credited as Labor not doing as badly as they could have done. It wasn't a landslide wipeout, but it could be because Crisafulli was running scared from that. If you're running scared from something, then nobody respects you. Like how with Angus Taylor saying that he's not endorsing Pauline Hanson's monoculture, but he says we want people with shared values, and now he said he wants a version of multiculturalism. So trying to have an each way, Angus. No one respects you for that. Cat Britt says, well, they only watch with subtitles like the deaf if they do not bother to learn the language. Well, that's how we watch foreign language films, with English subtitles. Now, going back to the one more thing I will say on the abortion issue, and I replied this to Ozpil, given that we have a declining fertility rate, surely that is related to the prevalence of abortion. And now, Pauline Hanson has banned the ABC from her media conferences, and she's also banned The Guardian because one of their photo journalists bragged that they chose a sinister-looking photo of Pauline Hanson to publish. And Of course, to ask a question on behalf of The Guardian at the press club, they selected Sarah Martin, who had to correct her misleading article the day before. Which reported that it said this man John Drew, who was a policy development officer, had defended the Hitler Youth and called Aboriginal people Stone Age. Sarah Martin's article it seemed to misleadingly imply that he was employed by the party when he just claimed to be a branch officer at the Ryan electorate, which is a nothing position, a branch officer. One Nation denied that he was a branch officer. So Sarah Martin got up to ask a question, and Pauline Hanson, quite rightly, let her have it.
Senator Hanson, Sarah Martin from The Guardian. Taxpayers are paying more than $150,000 a year for your daughter, Lee Hanson, to seemingly campaign full-time in Tasmania while employed as a political advisor for a New South Wales senator. Did you have any role in appointing her to that position?
Honestly, you never give up. I've never seen a person that's such a trashy journalist, and what you put out all the time, you've got this obsession with constantly trying to pull down myself, my party, or Mrs. Reinhardt. Whatever you do, you will be banned from my answering. I'll answer you this question today, but I'm telling you now, don't come near me for an interview in the future, because of 25 of your articles, it's always, 28 articles, is constantly bashing One Nation. You don't research properly, you don't know your information, and you will put out lies about me. Well, I've had enough of that. But I'll tell you that, no, I didn't get her that job. She got the job on her own merits by someone who actually wanted to employ her, her abilities, her skills in HR, her abilities in working for the Tas University for 8 years, and was head of a department down there. So my daughter is very capable of doing it. And if you're very concerned that she might end up in the Senate with me, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected by the people of Queensland, you're going to have a lot to write about then, aren't you?
So you had no role. So to clarify, you had no role in appointing her to that position, none whatsoever?
I've given you my answer.
Thank you.
You have.
Now, the old dinosaurs in the Canberra press gallery were outraged. How dare Pauline Hanson attack a respected journalist like Sarah Martin? Respected by who? Is respected by the elite Canberra press gallery bubble where they protect their own. So Barry Cassidy, the former host of ABC Insiders and used to work for Bob Hawke, he now hosts a Guardian Australia podcast with Redbridge's Tony Barry called Back to Back Barry. He was you could see him so outraged, and that the press gallery, they should all boycott our press conference. If you ban any of us, we're all out. And Pauline Hanson probably think, fine, I can just broadcast directly to Australians on social media. And this is what pisses these old dinosaurs in the press gallery. I include Paul Bongiorno, who used to be with Network 10, now writes for the Saturday paper. He's in his early 80s. And Paul Bongiorno, fun fact, in the mid-70s, he was training to be a Catholic priest in Ballarat and was housemates with Australia's worst pedophile priest, Gerard Ridsdale. Now, Paul Bongiorno said he had no idea what Ridsdale was up to. Pedophiles don't tend to announce themselves to the public. Now, Paul Bongiorno, his explanation was accepted, but another standard was applied to George Pell, who also shared a house with Gerard Ridsdale. people claimed that George Pell must have known, where, of course, it's, as I said before, like, pedophiles don't announce themselves widely, so it's extremely, it's definitely most likely that, and probably most definite, that neither George Pell or Paul Bongiorno had any inkling or suspicion or uneasiness. So I just thought I'd mention that there, because Paul Bongiorno is a massive lefty. He gets the pass for that. Then there's Malcolm Farr, who used to be the political editor of the Daily Telegraph and news.com.au, wrote a critique of One Nation and the Guardian. I didn't read it. And Peter Harcher on the Sydney Morning Herald, who brags he's been around for 50 years, wrote a article criticising Pauline, which I didn't read, because why would I waste my time with it? But I did listen to back-to-back Barrys, and Barry Cassidy, he's like, why is their double media standards for Pauline, and agreed with Raf Epstein. If she'd said her Muslim comments about Jewish people, there'd be calls for her to be charged. Again, a false equivalence. But what these old dinosaurs in the Canberra Press Gallery, Michelle Grattan asked the first question about, I have no record of Tim Fischer saying that you're a witch and should be burned at the stake, and Tim Fischer's widow is very offended by that. Michelle Grattan, who works for The Conversation, she's 81. She looks half dead with the scales on her face. They were all around 30 years ago when Pauline Hanson, One Nation first burst onto the scene, and they're pissed off that they no longer control the whole of the media. Like, they believe because we controlled, there was hardly, the internet was in its infancy. We controlled the television, radio, and print, and so we collectively could defeat Pauline Hanson then, but we can't because of the internet and all of the other sources of information out there. And of course, Albanese, he agrees with them. He doesn't like that there's all this misinformation and these rabbit holes and conspiracy theories. And obviously, there is now some former mainstream journalists and presenters who are now jumping in to internet podcasting, such as Carl Stefanovic, who has just been sacked by Channel 9. It is being reported for his interview on his Carl Stefanovic podcast with Tommy Robinson, who is described as far right, even though he's a kosher civic nationalist, dare I say, a liberal. And I saw Andrew Bolt say that Carl is copying the consequences of his actions. Maybe he wanted Channel 9 to terminate his contract 6 months early. He will still get a payout so he could do his podcasting full time. But it'll appear that it wasn't YouTube that deleted the video. It was him who scrubbed it. Now, Pauline Hanson reposted it on her YouTube channel. And so why did Carl remove it? Was he cucking? Because Carl has been a bit of a cuck in the past. So his Joe Rogan phase, it does seem to be opportunistic. Now, he does have in-show sponsors. So there's Ned's, the gambling company. So maybe he removed it because the sponsors objected to that episode. And if he does, Carl could run into a pickle with his podcast because, well, the mad fucking witches, and I don't know if Sleeping Giants Oz were going to come back. They were planning to target the Today Show's advertisers, but Karl Stefanovic, if he continues to have ads on his podcast, then those organizations could target the advertisers on his show. And would people be willing to pay for the Karl Stefanovic podcast? I certainly wouldn't, because I still believe there's a degree of performative to his a embrace of the larrikin. Again, I'm not completely buying it. Obviously, he had to do the mea culpa on promoting the COVID jab. The only one that I've listened to in full was with Bob and Robbie Katter, because it just fascinated me to have both Katter Senior and Junior together to talk about their father and son relationship from it's Robbie's birth until today. So that was the only one that I've watched in full. And then, of course, there's Kyle Sandilands, who, after getting his $12 million payout for the rest of his contract from Kiss FM, has said that he is enjoying the orange wave and is rooting for Pauline, calls her Auntie Pauline. Maybe his new show will be Kyle and Auntie Pauline, or maybe Kyle and Carl will have their joint show. Senator Slayer says, "Lucky Carl never." Yeah. I mean, if Karl Stefanovic, if he really wanted to cause maximum outrage, he would interview Thomas Sowell. Like I said, Tommy Robinson he may be considered far right by British standards. Katie Hopkins is considered far right as well, and Andrew Bolt wrote a column bagging her as well. Did you see Katie Hopkins get kicked out of the Dundee Arms when all she was doing was watching the England play in the World Cup? If that happened to a lefty, there'd be absolute outrage. And now Dave Hughes, he's still on the mainstream platforms, though he's doing his rants against the Albanese government, though he hasn't endorsed Pauline, I should say. The budget that is now almost over a month old is still causing the Albanese government headaches.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, there was a backdown somewhat from Albanese and Chalmers last week. The 50% capital gains discount will remain available to small businesses with a turnover of up to 10 million, so an increase of the threshold from 2 million. And Jim Chalmers claims that this will equal 2.7 million active small businesses, or 98% of active businesses, of what he calls generous capital gains tax concessions. And they also back down on their plans to tax discretionary testamentary trusts at a minimum rate of 30%, which were described as a death tax by stealth, because a discretionary testamentary trust, the person who controls the trust has to die for it to become a testamentary trust. And they also have a consultation paper on a proposed innovative business tax concession for startups. is we also had Albanese announce that the fuel excise cut. So we've had 32 cents off the fuel excise since April. So that's 26 cents off the federal government fuel excise plus 6 cents of the states foregoing their GST revenue. So from July 1, the price of petrol and diesel will go up by 16 cents per litre. So that'll be 3/4 of the excise. And then on August 2, it'll go up another 16 cents to the full excise. Now, again, the Canberra Press Gallery journalist saying, oh, the Albanese government had to end this because it was costing the budget too much money. That's the government's entitled to that fuel excise. Well, they tell us it pays for our roads, but it doesn't. It just goes to consolidated revenue, and they haven't figured out a way to have a fuel excise for electric vehicles because they don't need to fill up with petrol unless they're going to tax the EVs. There's a breaking news alert from The Guardian. Australian citizen working as a spy for Iran orchestrated... Let me just go back to this. Orchestrated Bondi firebombing, ASIO boss Mike Burgess says. I think he might be doing one of those national threat assessments. Now, the Albanese government, because Parliament is back this week, the Greens agreed to pass their rollback of negative gearing to only new properties. The rest are all being grandfathered or grandparented, as Nick McKim said, and also to pass the capital gains tax changes. So for big businesses and for those are not classified as small business with a turnover greater of 10 million, those who sell shares and those who sell homes, they will only have inflation adjusted capital gains discount, which is much less. And last week, they also announced another pay increase for childcare workers, which Pauline Hanson also criticised. And Pauline Hanson was criticised for that. She was also criticised for saying why should businesses pay for paid parental leave. She later clarified she supports the government paying for it, so there's no impost on businesses. And she also wanted industrial relations reform. He said it's too hard to sack people and ranted about lazy workers on their phones, which is it's a bit of a boomer generalization, I would say. But it's interesting that Labor's they can't help themselves with attacking Pauline Hanson over calling for a monoculture, but they're also going after her for saying that she'll be bad for workers and battlers, and she will be bad for women because she wants to roll back abortion. It's interesting that they are trying to, because the race and immigration stuff doesn't work anymore. So Albanese, his ministers, they're still working out on every time. So apparently, according to the mainstream media journalists, this was going to be the end of Pauline because she offended so many groups. Yeah, the Demos poll showed One Nation still in the low 30s, Labor in the high 20s, the Coalition still in the high teens. So great work, Angus. Well done. Fantastic move. You're at the same polling the same as Susan Ley, the MP leader that you rolled And Tony Abbott, it hasn't really helped him being a federal Liberal president. He is ringing up members, telling them not to defect to One Nation, stay in the Liberal Party, have cut price membership. Though Pauline Hanson, who was in the Victorian Liberal Party, was taking the Liberal Party Administrative Committee to court for granting the loan to John Pesciuto to pay his legal bills so he could avoid bankruptcy. She is now defected to One Nation. Well, she was going to probably get kicked out because she attended the One Nation fundraiser in Melbourne. Though sadly tonight, there's been the death of a recent Liberal defector to One Nation, Tina McQueen, who she was a regular on Sky News for many years and an absolute hoot. I remember when she was on Q&A, she was one of those that just she was happy to go into Lion's Den and just take them on. And fun fact, she used to work for Donald Trump's beauty pageants back in the day, and said she never saw him once behave inappropriately towards women. Not that Tina McQueen was against men making moves towards her. Some of her Liberal enemies, when she was on the federal executive, leaked against her, thinking it was a bad thing. Tina McQueen saying, "I'd kill to be sexually harassed." Some women like the attention, so maybe she actually would have liked Donald Trump to sexually harass her when she was working on his beauty pageants. But she died after a short illness. She looked like to be in her 70s, but to pass suddenly like that, it's a real tragedy there.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Guess what's back? Yes, that's right, it's bird flu. The doctors and nurses will have to get their TikToks moves ready for the chicken dance for the coming cases of bird flu. I don't know the moves, but maybe we can. Maybe all of us can get together and practice our chicken dance moves. My nana, she had the chicken dance on vinyl records, so that's how I got introduced to that. So yes, we have 3 cases of bird flu in Australia. When I say cases, I mean of actual birds. So we had a snap press conference by Agriculture Minister Julie Collins on Friday afternoon to announce that a H5N1 bird flu variant, that's, you pronounce it H, not H, as Sam Newman, that's his absolute pet, his most hated mispronunciation, mangling of the English language, if you listen to his podcast. Sam Newman's a grammar Nazi. That's the only type of Nazi that he is. It's the Geelong grammar education from years ago rubbing off on him. So that's his biggest, if anyone says H, then you're likely to give him a second stroke. So H5N1, the bird flu variant. So it's the media reports it as the deadly bird flu variant. So it was detected in a migratory seabird on a remote beach near Esperance in southern Western Australia. So how it got to be tested positive. The local wildlife worker found it sick, took it back to the local wildlife sanctuary, tested it, sent it to WA Health. They sent it on to the CSIRO in Geelong. It's amazing that they did all this for a sick bird. And now we've got we got confirmation of another case on Monday in Western Australia. Now it's spread to another state. There's a third case in South Australia. So it is of a, what seabird is it? It is a giant petrel. And now I can see Dawn Browning in the chat. They're not having my chooks. Well, they've got, because under the agricultural amendments that Dan Andrews passed, because remember they've been preparing for bird flu pandemic for around about 3 years. They've got the power now to raid your home and confiscate and kill your chickens. There was a bird flu outbreak of a different variant, was a couple of years ago at a couple of the local chicken farms here in Victoria. And of course, to save the chickens, you have to mass slaughter them. I remember when the barramite started affecting, it first came into Australia affecting the bee population. They exterminated 6 million bees to try and eradicate it, but they killed them for nothing because the mite is still here. Now, we apparently were the last continent to have birds be affected with H5N1. So we can't have. I'm pretty sure that the government and the public health hysterics would like to have a giant dome around Australia to stop birds flying in. Like obviously, humans were severely restricted from coming into Australia during the COVID lockdowns. Now, the Australian government has spent so far 113 million on H5 bird flu preparedness, including on national simulation exercises conducted by an interagency H5 task force. And so there's now an official birdflu.gov.au, also known as avian influenza, not Evian influenza. You can't get it by drinking Evian water. And yeah, so you've got the the yellow there with the exclamation mark. And if you notice multiple sick or dead birds or other animals, you should not touch them or not get too close. A report. So there's the 24-hour emergency animal disease hotline. And so it says, it's got here about bird flu, human health, protecting your birds, poultry and other farmers, vets and wildlife. So it describes it here as highly pathogenic. Now, it should be noted that although this is the first case in birds, in 2024, a 2-year-old child tested positive in Victoria after returning travel from India. Now, of course, it was in Victoria, but it didn't transmit person to person. Of course, all of these all of these epidemiologists, virologists warning of another pandemic, we always hear, what if it mutates? Yeah, well, what if there's an alien spaceship that descends from the sky? These are ridiculous, these hypotheticals. Countless what ifs can happen. And of course, there is talk of the media, of course, love the old food shortage. They are quite disappointed that there was no petrocalypse, which led to empty supermarket shelves. So the best they can hope for now is for some hysterical bad news stories is empty chicken and egg shelves, which will become first. Now, there has been already the first lockdown because of the bird flu. So Inghams in Western Australia have announced a lockdown of their chicken farms. And so well, at least the ones that come from Western Australia, the Inghams chickens, they can't claim to be free range. So no free range chickens. So they have to be indoors. So they're back to being cage eggs like we were, cage chickens like we were caged humans here in Victoria. So all non-essential access to facilities, they have to have the proper paperwork, enhanced biosecurity protocols. They're going to put some masks on the chickens. Again, are we going to have another press conference? Every time that we're up to 3 now, we're going to have another press conference from Julie Collins or Murray Watt, the Environment Minister. Every time there is another case. They're in birds, for goodness sake. It's like the birds, like you see, birds die from like wind turbines as well. So that's not a national emergency, but we're also told that we could have no more cockatoos or kookaburras or singing magpies as well, so they could all just drop from the sky, all of our songbirds. So there's also that our native animals could because they can affect mammals as well. This is why they speculate that it could jump to humans, because a lot of sea lions have died. So yeah, we'll see if there's another Snap press conference tomorrow. We're going to have daily press conferences.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, as I said earlier on, we survived the petrocalypse, and so much for when Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, that it didn't become worse than COVID or worse than the 1973 oil crisis, because global markets are much more resilient than the energy doomers predicted. And we sort of learned to adopt. But Donald Trump, obviously, he's got the midterms coming up, and the war didn't go to how he was expecting, because Netanyahu sold it to him. Donald Trump was cocky because he had extracted Maduro from Venezuela, and he saw all of the protesters on the street around. This will be a piece of cake. We just kill the Ayatollah and a few senior people, and then the people rise up, and there will be a happy ending. Well, it's been anything but. And so this is a war that has been going on now for 4 months, but we have this it's a memorandum of understanding which Donald Trump signed at the G7 in France. There's Macron clapping on, and you can see Marco Rubio behind him, who's not clapping. Now, we haven't heard much from Marco Rubio, who's a neocon and wanted the US to move on his native Cuba next for regime change. Like, you couldn't even change one regime. And we're also not hearing from Pete Higgins either, who said we negotiate with bombs. So Donald Trump wants an out, but he doesn't want a deal that is worse than the one that Obama got. Though it looks pretty bad to me in terms of, well, the $300 billion reconstruction fund, and it lifts pretty much all the sanctions on Iran, and they just commit to not enriching any more uranium and have weapons inspectors. But it's, as I said last week, because the first point, the memorandum of understanding applies to Lebanon and Israel. The neocon Zionists in the United States, Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, they have turned on this and saying, how can you sell out Israel or bind Israel? Netanyahu is now really paying the price for basically being Trump's partner in this war. Like, he talked him into this war, and now he's joined at the hip because Donald Trump says, I call the shots, he doesn't. And of course, we had Iran claim that the strait was shut because Israel continued its attacks on in Lebanon. Their troops are still there, but also we've had the neocons, of course, say, oh, Israel's just acting in self-defense. The neocon Zionists, Israel can never do anything wrong, and they will take Israel's sides over the United States side. And this is why you've had Vice President J.D. Vance not just out there to sell the deal, but to basically criticize the Israeli government ministers and other Israeli politicians who've criticized this deal, basically saying, look, you're friendless. We're basically the best allies that you've got left in the world.
Now, I saw the Axios report, that Netanyahu is fuming. That's not reflective of the conversations that I've had with him, but maybe he's saying something to somebody else that he's not saying to me. What I will say, and this does bother me, is that you've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal, and in some ways very personally attacked the President of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. And the second message I would give to some of those cabinet members, Bibi, to his credit, has not gone down this path, but to some of these cabinet members in Israel who are attacking the President of the United States, the other thing that I would say is that over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the President of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in.
But yeah, you've seen people in their system, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who've attacked the deal. And I guess my response to them would be, what is your exact proposal? And, you're a country of 9 million people. You can't just kill your way out of solving every single national security problem that you have.
In the same way that sometimes criticism of the Israeli government can be expressed in a way that's anti-Semitic, it's just not the case that every criticism of Bibi Netanyahu's policy decisions leads to anti-Semitism or is anti-Semitic. And so I do think that sometimes, advocates of Israel or pro-Israel people in the United States make two critical mistakes.
on the one hand is not delineating between America's interests and Israeli interests, because they're not always the same. But the second is always conflating criticism of a particular government with Jew hatred. Because if everything is Jew hatred, then nothing is Jew hatred. I actually think Jew hatred is very bad, which is why I think we have to be very careful about not calling it's kind of like how progressives for 20 years called everything racist. And if everything is racism, nothing is racism. And we have to be very careful not to, in order to serve a certain foreign policy objective, try to criticize somebody as anti-Semitic when they're just not.
Well, we know Itamar Ben-Gvir's exact proposal, and that is to kill Israel's way out of its threats. So this is what he posted on his official X account, which was deemed to have violated X's rules on... It says here that says violates X rules. However, X has determined that it be in the public's interest for the post to remain accessible. So he wrote, for every tear of an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers must weep. All of Lebanon must burn. With all due respect to the Americans, Israel must make it clear to the entire world that the blood of our sons and the security of our citizens are not forfeit. All of Lebanon must burn. Our supreme duty is to protect the citizens of Israel and the soldiers of the IDF. And this commitment takes precedence over every other consideration. I told the Prime Minister in our private meetings, for every tear of an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers must weep. So he said that twice in that post. So there's 6 million people who live in Lebanon. So Ben-Gvir is publicly saying that he wants to genocide a whole people. So 6 million for 6 million. Now, you had Netanyahu say, oh, this is not it's how we do things. The IDF does things. He's in your government. He's not some crank on the back bench. He's your national security minister. And you might remember Ben-Gvir. He was the one with the Israeli flag dancing around the IDF soldiers, zip tying the detained members of the Gaza flotilla. In every other Western nation, somebody like that wouldn't even get elected to parliament, let alone be part of a government. And it's because of nutbags like him that in Western nations, Israel's disapproval rating is in the 60s and 70s, even in the United States. And, well, if Israel claims that it can do it all alone now, then they don't need a military aid from the United States. But then you have Trump's handpicked ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who has that line that Israel doesn't need the United States. The United States needs Israel. The United States existed for approximately 170 years, thereabouts, without the state of Israel existing. So that's an absolutely absurd thing. And there was some conference where you had like Melanie Phillips saying that Israel should go it alone. Well, so Israel, again, if Israel says it can do everything alone, it doesn't need aid from the United States anymore. But the problem is that because Trump joined with Netanyahu and Israel, Iran is now going to hold America responsible for Israel's actions, including in the 60 days negotiating for a peace process. So it's Trump kind of walked into that one, and now a lot of commentators have said that JD Vance is the fall guy if the negotiation during the 60 days falls through, because he's in Switzerland leading the negotiations. But if it falls apart, I think that, and it's due to Israeli strikes in Lebanon, I think it's, although a lot of people try to argue that, if you're not pro-Israel, you must be pro-Iran. No, again, you're either with the good guys or for the bad guys. But Israel, by poking the bear, it's obviously that's going to make it so that Iran is going to close the Strait of Hormuz once again. Well, they claim that it's never going to go back to the way that it was. And this is why no other US administration or president was silly enough to try and attempt regime change in Iran, because they were told they would close the Strait of Hormuz. And there was the confusion, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard saying it was closed, the Iranian government saying it wasn't. Like, look, we've gotten through it with the Strait of Hormuz closed. So as I said before, the total global economy didn't grind to a halt, but certainly it would ease global inflation and also lead to a more global productivity if the Strait of Hormuz was once open once again. What's happened here? My Stream Deck's failed. I knew something like this would happen tonight. So Keir Starmer announced his resignation on Monday. Well, even though he's resigned, he's not going to resign formally until September. So the UK has caught a severe case of the Australian disease when we went through 5 prime ministers in 8 years. They've gone through 7 prime ministers in 10 years. It all kicked off when David Cameron resigned after campaigning against Brexit, and Brexit referendum passed. Then there was Theresa May. She couldn't get Brexit done. Then there was Boris Johnson, but in a episode of madness and political suicide, the Tory MPs decided to launch a coup against Boris Johnson. Liz Truss won the members' vote, but the party elites wanted Rishi Sunak, so Liz Truss only lasted about 50 days. And then there was Rishi Sunak until he was defeated by Labour under Keir Starmer in the 2024 election. Keir Starmer won a landslide not because he was charismatic or had a excellent manifestos, because it was a vote against the dysfunctional Conservative government that had broken Britain. And the 2024 general election, that was the only time that there's been a change of prime minister when there's been a vote for the people. Now, because Labour in some polls had been 3rd or even 4th, Reform ahead by up 10 points or plus, the poor result in the local government elections, and because the Labour left had never liked Starmer because they considered him too right-wing, an outsider, that he was basically, because Kate Britt says Starmer looks like a robot. That's basically what he was. And also the Labour left didn't like that he was so pro-Israel, wanting to banish the anti-Semitic Jeremy Corbyn party, the Labour Party. And so there was already a lot of animosity against Keir Starmer, and they found their alternative in Andy Burnham, who was a Westminster MP and was a minister under Gordon Brown, tried to run for the Labour leadership in 2015 against Jeremy Corbyn, but resigned in 2017 to run for the mayor of Greater Manchester, won 3 terms, and one of Starmer's own MPs vacated the Wigan seat of Makerfield. Now, Wigan is a city in Greater Manchester, and Reform made a big campaign. They wanted to obviously throw a spanner in the works of the coronation of Andy Burnham, and Rupert Lowe's Restore actually ran as well, and all of the Reform bots, so many of the what I call the intellectual dark web establishment publications in the UK, such as The Spectator, Spiked, they've all switched from the Conservatives to Reform, and they view Restore as too far right and too juvenile. And so they're already getting their talking points that if Andy Burnham won, it was because Restore split the vote. But then we had the result, and because Britain has first past the post, so who gets the most votes, even if it's 40, 30, even 20%, they win. But Andy Burnham won a majority of the votes. Now, a lot of this was tactical voting from Lib Dem and Green voters, so he won roughly 54% of the votes. So if you add up the Reform, Restore, and Conservative votes, not enough to defeat Andy Burnham. So this is a setback to Reform because they didn't have their scapegoat in Restore. The Conservatives, though, they think that they're back in town because they won the Aberdeen South by-election in Scotland. And, of course, the Conservative MPs are trying to pump up Kemi Badenoch. Why is she still the leader when the party's polling third or sometimes fourth? Now, even though, like I said, even though Keir Starmer's resigned, because of the Labour Party election process, he's not going to resign until September. So Andy Burnham's coronation, he was called the King in the North. It's as mayor of Greater Manchester, and I'm not sure if Labour has had a prime minister from the north, but the Labour MPs, they've already coronated him. There's this selfie that he did with the Labour MPs there. Now, yes, he does look slimmer than Keir Starmer. And, well, it doesn't have grey hair, probably has better glasses there. He took the train down to London and Westminster. He's just like you and me taking the train there. Now, he is more left-wing than Starmer, supports nationalisation of industries. He, as Mayor of Greater Manchester, put the local buses under public ownership. So the solution from Labour is that we need a principled left winger, that we need to be our own version of the populist left. So we need to go back to old Labour, not the Blairite new Labour. Now, Keir Starmer's legacy will be as the pioneer of two-tier justice in Britain, going back to his time as the director of the Crown Prosecution Service. Maybe now he can spend more time getting behind Ukraine. And now, speaking of getting behind Ukraine, two of those Ukrainian models who were on trial for arsoning his North London home, which I assume he's going to move back into unless he's going to stay with Lord Ali again. So Roman Lovongog, 22, was found guilty of conspiracy to commit arson and alternate counts of damaging property by fire, reckless endangerment to life. So he was the one who carried out the attacks, including setting fire to the car. There was Stanislav Kapurik, 27, Ukrainian-born Romanian national, found guilty of conspiracy. He was involved in the planning and received payment from this money, which we're told was a Russian national. But acquitted was 35-year-old Petro Poknyok, a Ukrainian national who's cleared of the conspiracy charge. And so this was, we were told that this was a Russian plot, though the Crown prosecutors told the jury, we don't need to prove that, we just need to prove that they're guilty of this offense. And now, of course, it was always weird that three Ukrainian models were the accused. What are the chances? And like I said, with his relationship with Lord Ali, there have been always questions about Keir Starmer's personal life, and of course the media run cover for politicians, or there's all of these super injunctions that media can't even report on in the British justice system. Now, the grooming gang inquiry has now begun. Remember, Indigenous Brits, they were raped by these Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs, but the authorities either turned a blind eye or arrested the girls because they didn't want to appear racist. Now, we've had something similar happen with the murder of baby Preston Davey at just 13 months by his adoptive gay dad, Jamie Varley, and Varley's partner, John McGowan Faritsky, was also convicted of related offences. So Preston Davey was placed with the couple around 9 months by Oldham Council. These councils, they should all be abolished because they are liable in so much of the injustices that go on in Britain. So he endured months of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, suffering about 40 injuries, was taken to hospital 3 times in the final months for breathing issues, seizures, bruising, rash, and a fractured arm. Yet concerns about non-accidental injury were not escalated. He was returned home each time, even though he was seen by multiple social workers, doctors, nurses, yet they all deferred because the man who was convicted of his murder by suffocating poor Preston, I don't even want to go into that. It's just like there's video of baby Preston like giggling. It might have been taken when he was in the care of the foster family for the first 9 months of his life. It just breaks your heart. So Jamie Varley was a teacher, and so the council's social workers seemed to defer to his explanation because he was a teacher. Now, Preston, the reason he was placed under adoption is because Preston's mother, Sarah Davey, had a significant criminal history, jailed as a teenager for murder. So his maternal grandmother, Debbie Davey, wanted to care for him, but was unable to due to a breast cancer diagnosis at the time. Now, there has been a lot of commentary that gay couples shouldn't be able to adopt, especially boys, and that children need mothers. Well, we have seen, sadly, heaps of recently, like countless mothers accused of murdering their children. But certainly, why did the adoption agency and the council choose a gay couple is because they wanted to appear progressive. Now, if that wasn't a most heinous enough news, there was a 3-year-old who was thrown into a crocodile enclosure at the Johnson Zoo of Oldhurst in Cambridgeshire by a 30-year-old man who was initially charged with attempted murder but was released on bail until September because of learning difficulties and wasn't fit to be interviewed by police. What was the police interview like? Now, again, it appeared to be that he was taken to the zoo, this 30-year-old with learning difficulties, by 2 carers from the local council who had lanyards. This is in the Daily Mail. So carers accompanying a disabled man on a trip to Cambridge Zoo were on their phones and 10 metres behind before he allegedly hurled a 3-year-old boy into a crocodile enclosure. Now, there are reports that at least one of the reptiles attacked the boy before zookeeper Tracy Johnson, with her husband Andy, she jumped the pit and snapped him. He suffered a fractured pelvis and also a broken arm. So he is recovering, but this is a new low for the UK, that the rights of a disabled man seem to supersede the right of a 3-year-old and others to not be thrown into crocodile enclosures. Now you can see the map here. There's sufficient protection there. So this disabled man would have had to basically throw him above his head. That's basically what would have had to have happened. And why did this care home think that for a social and out in the community visit care that a visit to a zoo. We don't know this man's mental history. All we have is limited information from the police. There was people on X basically making excuses for this. Oh, you can't charge a person who is who can't be found criminally culpable, and that you can't interview somebody who's not in their right mind. That's against their rights and due process. But the public have the right to be safe. So we still have no other information, but we do hear that the boy is going to make a full recovery, but we were told by the apologists, it seems, for the release of this man on bail until December, that he'll be kept in a secure care home. Well, how do we know that? How do we have any reassurances that he won't be let out on another social visit? Now, under our NDIS, which the Albanese government is trying to rein in, but they've allowed the Greens an 8-week inquiry to literally wheel out witnesses to claim if you do these cuts, people will die and there'll be blood on your hands. Now, part of the expensive part is this care in the community, going to the movies and whatnot. But a lot of the disabled people have complained that their carers are on their phones. Well, thankfully, the carers being on their phone in Australia hasn't led to a situation, this heinous event that's occurred in the UK. Now, going back to Preston Davies murderers, we can only hope the only form of justice that appears to be dished out to child murderers in British prisons is by other inmates. And so these 3 men, who Mark Fellows, David Taylor and Lee Newell, were found guilty of killing a child murderer, Kyle Bevan, who was serving a life sentence for murdering his partner's 2-year-old daughter, Lola James, in 2020. And of course, you have the scowling judge who gave these 3 inmates life sentences. These pompous judges with their pompous wigs, the ones who were also sending Sarah Connolly to prison for a social media post. There'd be a lot of people who'd say, well, give them a discount on their sentence for removing this evil person from the face of the earth. And apparently Vikram Digwa, the Sikh who was convicted of murdering Henry Novak, but remember the police handcuffed him because Digwa accused Henry of racism. Apparently he's fearful of his safety in prison. Good. Especially since he only got a minimum of 21 years. So, again, I trace a lot of this back to Tia Keir, long before I became Prime Minister, back when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
And that brings us to the end tonight. Gone way over time tonight, so I'll run through this quickly. Remember, well, I'm covering 8 days worth. So remember, if you want to support the work of the Unshackled, please consider taking out a financial membership. subscription over on Substack, theunshackled.substack.com/subscribe, or a membership over at theunshackled.net/membership. And also, I'm a contributor to Reality Check Radio, and you can sign up to their Australian weekday newsletter, where you get the best curation of real news direct to your inbox every morning. You can sign up at biteme.news, and my Wilms report for this week with Paul Brennan on the breakfast program is up. So, of course, talk about bird flu and it's the surge of One Nation as well. I'll have a report from Tiger Mountain later this week with Richard Wollstonecroft as well. Thank you so much for your company. A day later, I'll be back at the regular time on Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time, to bring you the week's in news. Thank you so much for your company once again. And we're still living in interesting times, exciting times in Australia. So please, there's a lot to be positive about. And so just, I would say just, who knows where we'll be again next week. I'll be there to tell you exactly then. Good night.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com to view the archive of episodes, and keep visiting theunshackled.net to view all our shows, and to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.